Welcome to Spin a Yarn Live, a tea time book club and crafting circle.
Greetings!
So today we will be talking about another fine myth in the Mythink series.
By Robert Asprin.
Yes.
Last time I didn't say aspirin, I said
No,
something else.
You said something else.
Aston, I think.
So at this part of the stream, we invite you to use the Twitter hashtag
Yarn it all.
Yarn it all, which is what I'm crafting right now, to show what you're currently working on, where your current progress is, and then at the end of the stream we'll look at that. Of course, this is still one of our pre-recorded streams, so there's nobody watching yet. So,
Hello, people of the future.
hello future.
If you're watching this, I don't know.
Who knows? So what tea do we have, love?
Okay, so today we're trying a new tea. This is a Korean tea, 5 Senses Rose Tea.
Huh.
We got this at the Super H Mart. It's down here in Georgia. I didn't pour you a cup. It is, rose teas are very light teas, and this is definitely very light. It's a very delicate tea to give you, to give you an example about light teas. When you make a black tea, standard black tea, you want to boil the water. So you want to get it to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees centigrade. But for something for like white tea, which is generally considered one of the most delicate teas, like 170 or 180 Fahrenheit. I don't know the centigrade equivalent, even though I'm a chemist. So when I looked it up, because I didn't know, and it does not have, I mean, the brewing instructions are kind of in Korean. So, do my best. But I Googled it, and it said for rose teas that the water should be between 140 and 150. Luckily, I have a programmable electric kettle, so I was able to heat the water to 150. I have a cast iron teapot, and it is sitting over a tea light so that the tea will remain warm. But it's a very light tea. It says it is made with rose, goji berry, 5-fingerberry, cornelian, cherry, and raspberry. Now that's a lot of berry in there, so you'd think it'd be fairly tart, and it's really not. I brewed it for 3 minutes, which is what it says on here. It does say to boil water, but because it is a rose tea, I decided to look it up, and Google said 140 to 150, so that's what I did, because if you boil the water at too hot a temperature for certain teas, you can burn the teas and produce a very bitter taste. So you can taste the rose. It's a very light taste, and you can kind of taste a little bit of the goji and raspberry, but other than that...
Yeah, it's very subtle.
It is a very subtle tea. I'm a black tea drinker myself. This is a lazy afternoon tea. Like, I'd like to try this tea iced. It's so light a tea that I would almost consider it to be more of a spring or summery time kind of a tea, and an iced thing might be a little bit better. But to brew iced tea is a little complicated. So yeah. I used to be a barista, so I know probably too much about both tea and coffee. But anywho, so that's what we're drinking. I am still working on my barrel top from knitpicks.com. See, it's a very easy top. Look how simple it is. Anyway, Paul's still working on his bookmark.
My bookmark. I'm doing a bookmark hashtag yarn it all.
Doing some cross stitching.
Well, just needlepoint.
Needlepoint.
Because I'm just doing the one side, which I think I meant to look it up, but I didn't. I think it's called like a basket stitch or basket weave stitch or something.
Sounds about right. Not a needlepoint.
But yeah, you just go from one side to the other corner and then just do it once. So basically, half cross stitch everywhere.
Yeah.
But with more thread so it fills out.
Yep. Alright, so that's what we're drinking and that's what we're working on. Let's talk about another fine myth.
You know, I left all my notes in the other room.
Paul left all his notes in the other room.
It's fine. You got this.
I don't know how many times he's read this book.
A lot.
I mentioned for our last video that I had not actually read the book, but Paul has read it to me. We sometimes do this thing where he'll like read to me in bed, which usually means I fall asleep most of the time. So this was my first time kind of reading it myself, and I gotta say, I'm not impressed.
Really?
It's really anticlimactic. There's a pretty big build-up with the villain.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a cop-out. I gotta be honest with you guys. Also, the download... So Paul has the trade paperback, which you see back here. And, I'm not sure who did the cover art for this one. I don't know if it's gonna say... Our cat just sneezed. It's super cute. Well, now I can't.
Can't find it immediately.
I can't find it immediately. So he had the trade paperback. So I downloaded it onto my Nook through the Barnes & Noble website, and it has artwork by what's his name? I wrote it down. Hang on, I have stuff here. I know stuff. Hang on. I'm totally prepared, you guys.
Totally prepared.
I'm like super awesome sauce prepared. Oh, Phil Foglio. Phil Foglio did the illustrations for the downloaded version. I don't like him.
Do you have any examples of that?
I can show you the cover art. It's a very loose art form that it's sorry, is it's kind of childlike or childish, I should say. Now, because I have the Nook glow light,
there's no way they can.
It might be hard to see.
You may or may not be able to see that.
Yeah, and that thing's too far back. But like you can kind of see his face.
Actually,
is this the original one?
If I recall correctly, I don't know if Phil Foglio is actually the original one, but when it came out, it was put into either Dungeon Magazine or Dragon Magazine as a comic.
Oh, really?
And the comic style was super heavily stylized, and yeah, I wasn't. Having grown up with the books and actually reading the books, when I actually did discover that had some comics with it, I wasn't really... I wasn't a big fan of the design choices.
Yeah.
But that looks kind of like it could be that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't particularly like the illustrations. Another thing, if you decide to read this book, you can certainly download it on your e-reader, whatever you got, Kindle, Nook, whatever. There are a lot of typos. There are quite a few typos. So,
Are there?
Yes. Like, I think what happened is that...
They may have just done, like, a scan of the pages
I think they did a scan. Because there's some things where, like, it's supposed to say him, and it says HIRN.
Yeah.
So you can tell that, you know, like an R and an N, if you smush them together, it's an M. An M. So I think that's what happened is they did a scan and
never proofread.
And didn't proofread. Yeah, for stuff like that. So I mean, it's not. So that's kind of. So that's, that was kind of distracting. I find that a little distracting, but another thing, and I wanted to ask you about this because I don't know if this is something to do with the downloaded version or if this has to do with the book in general. But the villain, when we meet Oz, when we meet the demon, or the Purvect, they talk about Istvin.
Yes.
And Oz says, when Oz says Istvin, apparently he's pronouncing it slightly differently. However, there's no change in spelling.
Right. Yeah, that's original.
Okay. I found that also a little weird. Like, not even an accent mark or anything.
Yeah, it was a little weird because later Skeeve, I have this in my notes somewhere, but later Skeeve actually mentions, asks about a devil, and I was just like, a what? Oh, you mean a devil? Or
It is spelled differently.
Deveel. Because, no, Deva. Yeah, no, D-E.
Yeah, Deva is
so I don't know what the actual pronunciation is, but Oz could tell the difference between those pronunciations, but not Istvan and Istvan.
Yeah, so maybe it's...
Just small little plot hole.
Yeah, so maybe it's, something like that. So yeah, I didn't really... Maybe it's because when you read it to me, it was different. I mean, I'm excited to go ahead and read more of it because I know what's going to happen further on in the series, so I want to read more, but I've got to say that this particular book doesn't make me want to read more. Because the writing I find to be very childish. Like, not childish, but I feel like it's a really low reading level. This particular book.
It's definitely more of a kid's book.
But it's not a kid's book. That's the thing. Because like...
It's a kid's book of the 70s.
I guess it's a kid's book of the 70s, but they talk a lot about both violence and sex. So it's like, I mean... You know, my first jobs was working as a barista in Borders before they went under, and then I worked for Barnes & Noble for a few years, so I know me some books, alright? And I don't know where I would put this book in the store. I wouldn't put it in young adult because there's too much overt references to both sex and violence. But I'm not sure if I would classify it the same as the Dresden Files because it doesn't read like that much of a hardcore book.
No, I'd put it in young adult. Same with Fablehaven, even though it does have a lot more, but it's, different times.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, the book was written in the 70s originally, 78,
I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, originally written in 78. So, there are some bits that are going to annoy me, just even from the perspective of a woman. Let's put it that way. There is a female character. We do get Tanda. And while Tanda is a strong female character in of herself, she is still very much clearly the sex object. Like, and that's how she plays herself.
And it's actually...
That's how she plays it. Now, I will... Because our main character... Skeeve.
Yes.
I guess is supposed to be very young. We're not given an age for him. We're not given an actual age. But I think the idea is that he's pretty young. Let's say early 20s.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would say early 20s.
I was thinking late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's in his early 20s and not say he's still a child. Anyway, I don't like Skeeve. And that's I guess the writing gets better because again, having heard the books from Paul when he would read them to me, from what I remember of the future books, I really do enjoy Skeeve. I guess as he grows up, he becomes a far more likable character.
Once he starts knowing what's going on a bit more. Gains some more confidence.
Yeah,
and more personality.
Yes. He definitely doesn't have a lot of personality. Like, one thing that was kind of weird to me that I wrote down, from the reader's perspective, Skeeve seems to be human. But in his dimension of Claw, there are unicorns and, like, badger moles and stuff like that. They do that. It seems to be fairly reminiscent of Avatar: The Last Airbender, where they just kind of smush two things together. Yeah. But so there's a war unicorn that this demon hunter is riding on. And I'm a little confused because is he human or is he something else?
I mean, Claw is basically a swords and sorcery version of our Dark Ages.
But it's either one or the other. Oz makes note of that. Because you either learn swords or you learn sorcery.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that world is what we kind of fantasize about the Dark Ages.
Like
if we turned the Arthurian legends, if we went back to the medieval period, if you go into medieval times,
I've never been to a medieval times.
No.
Hilarious, because I've been to the Georgia Renaissance Festival every year.
But it's that kind of thing, and so it's definitely not Earth.
But they do call themselves human.
They do call themselves humans and humanoids, but that's just...
Yeah, because the book is written from Skeeve's perspective, so it's a first person for Skeeve. And, I mean, I will say this. He's supposed to be a bit of an idiot. Yeah. He's supposed to be a bit ignorant of all these things. So, Oz treats him as such. Like, he tries to explain, he tries to be as patient as possible, but Oz will make several references to modern day, not pop culture, but stuff. He'll make references to poker. He'll make references to baseball or football, American football. So, and of course Skeeve has no idea what he's talking about, which is humorous in its own right, but it gets annoying and a little grating for me. Like, this is a really quick read. I mean, it's only like 173 pages. Like I said, its reading level seems rather low, despite the fact that there's a lot of mature content, in my opinion. Because, I mean, Tanda comes in and she's, all very sensual and all that jazz. But she is an assassin. And she does try to kill people in this book. So it's kind of like, well, death and murdering people and stabbing them in the face and stuff is not really kid stuff.
I mean, she's basically the Marvel's Black Widow. But in kind of a...
but she's a little bit more, I don't want to say likable. I mean, is it going okay? Is that just our internet?
I don't know.
Sorry, it looks like the
stream froze?
The stream might have froze.
That's doing stuff. Let me just refresh page and see what happens.
Okay. Well, anyway, it is recording, so whatever. But yeah, it's Yeah. I mean, you've read the book several times before, so I know you like it.
Yeah, so I love this series. Yeah, the first book I feel is definitely much better at kind of just introducing everything. The big bad isn't really that bad, even though he's played up to be very big and bad. And all my favorite books are definitely later on, and I have a lot of really favorite books in this series. I actually really love how they handled it in the beginning with the exposition dump at the beginning that you have to have. Instead of just having it like be two people talking to each other, Oz gets summoned in and Skeeve's original master
is killed and all that jazz.
So Oz is wandering around trying to figure out what's going on, see if there's anything he can use, and just doing his thing, but he's just chatting with this apprentice as he's doing it. So we get an exposition dump, but it's done in a very interesting way.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a movie and this was the screenplay, it would be a good example of the show don't tell thing. It would be a good example of you being shown more or less the exposition, because there's still something happening in the scene. It's not someone just talking to you.
Yeah.
About what's going on and just kind of doing a bit of a monologue. Skeeve asks questions, Oz gets annoyed and all that jazz.
Yeah, because Oz comes from a planet much more like modern Earth, but with magic.
Yeah. He says magic and technology live side by side and work together to become pretty powerful, which is why his particular species is actually pretty well respected and a little feared. Which actually brought me to kind of a random question, but when he is summoned, like on the cover of the book, Oz is wearing a loincloth. You know, he's kind of this scaly reptilian. He's this kind of scaly reptilian humanoid creature. Osiris is. Hang on. Listen, kitty. Got a lot of stitch holders going on here. Mwah! You're a good boy. What's on your belly? Okay. So Oz is as a Pervect. He's from the planet Per.
Or the dimension Per.
I'm sorry. Dimension, sorry. Yeah.
So just in case you haven't read this, like the homework was, there's a whole bunch of different parallel dimensions, and people who hop from one dimension to another dimension are dimension travelers, or demons for short. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them, like DeVille's, did a lot of hopping and ended up sprouting a lot of mythology about their home planet that had got all burned and disgusting. So they look like
devils.
What we think of as devils, and talk about hell.
Yeah, they've got cloven, hooved feet.
Yep, little horns.
But they stand upright. Stand upright. They've got tails with the point at the end. You know, they look like our traditional idea of a devil or a devil, as it were. But my question is we see him on the cover here wearing a loincloth. Now, after Skeeve's master summoned him, and then as kind of a prank took away his magic, we don't figure out until later that he used kind of a joke powder that apparently lasts for only about a century. So what the life expectancy is for a creature like Oz, we don't know yet. But Skeeve apparently is more like a normal human. His life expectancy seems to be the same as what ours is.
Yep.
But when he appears, and then Garken, Skeeve's current magician master, is killed, Oz is going around trying to find some loot and just find some clothes and all this stuff. And so my question is he naked when he first appears? Because he shows him in a loincloth, but I mean later he's wearing he's wearing just some regular clothes. But
yeah, I mean, because it also shows him with a Tanda image I'm not a big fan of, and then Skeeve in the full brown cloak and whatnot, but does describe what he that he's changes into clothing from this era, one of Skeeve's shirts, and he's also shorter than Skeeve.
Yeah, so this illustration is a little...
Yeah, it's not good.
It's not good. I almost think the illustrations in the downloaded version are a little better. They're a little bit more cartoony, but they show him more as a squatter being that's a little bit less humanoid than this. Like a really big mouth full of teeth.
Yeah, that's from the comic.
Which I get the impression is more what Robert Asprin was going for, because Skeeve notes many times when Oz smiles, it's an unsettling thing to look at because he's got really pointed teeth.
Yeah, two rows of needle sharp teeth.
Exactly. So it's more of an unnerving thing. Whereas this illustration seems a little bit more comical, and Oz is a little bit more humanoid in my opinion.
I mean, in this illustration, he almost looks like Beast from X-Men, except green and scaly instead of blue and fuzzy. But the way he's holding himself and orating.
Yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, so it's from the 70s, so I will forgive somewhat the female roles. However, but I will say this. When we find Tanda and Oz recognizes her, he seems to treat her with the respect due to someone who is a professionally trained assassin. Mm-hmm. And when they say assassin, they put a capital A on it. So she mean business.
Yeah,
Seriously.
It's equivalent to a multi-dimensional assassins guild.
Right, yeah.
Because they talk about being a trained assassin or with the assassin's license or whatnot. Mm-hmm. No, I really like her character. You don't see too much of her character in this book.
No, she kind of shows up a little bit later.
Yeah.
But she's still an integral.
Yeah, this book is definitely much more about
Stop chewing on my stuff.
introducing Skeeve to the idea of magic and dimensions.
Mm-hmm. Like you were saying how you don't like that illustration of her, but I think you'd like the illustration that's in here even less.
Yeah. The one for the Dungeon magazine or the Dragon magazine, which had...
It's really small. I'd like to show you guys, but it's super small. And because my Nook is black and white, I'm not sure if you'd be able to see it very well. Yeah, that didn't work. So, but anyway, so she's a fine character, but I guess just because of like the environment that Skeeve grew up in, which again was more our version of the Middle Ages.
Time, yeah.
Yeah, so he just like, since everything's from her perspective, from his perspective, sorry. Yeah. From his perspective, he pays a lot of attention to Tanda after she shows up in a very, of course, sexual way.
Yeah.
Which kind of annoys me, but he's supposed to be a kid and he's supposed to be ill-experienced, and Oz keeps kind of cuffing him upside the head for, you know, being an idiot. So
yeah,
I guess I'll deal with that. That's fine. So yeah, as I said at the start, it's pretty anticlimactic. So we've got Istvin, who is apparently this really hardcore, powerful magician who has tried in the past to take over multiple dimensions. And it looks like he's trying to do it again. So Oz and Skeeve team up to try to stop him. And Oz takes Skeeve as his apprentice since Oz's powers are gone. And Skeeve can do magic, but he's not very well trained. So Oz takes him on as an apprentice, you know, all this jazz. We get some allies, including Tanda, and accidentally we get a little baby dragon whose name, well, all he says is Gleep.
Yep.
So they just end up calling him Gleep. He's absolutely adorable, and I really, really love him a lot. And the illustration on the front of this book doesn't really capture what he looks like, because on the front of this book I think he's black.
No, he's green. I mean, it's a dark green. That looks a little black, depending on how you... It's like the white and gold dress, or the blue and white dress, or whatever. The dress.
In the book, he's described as green. In my opinion, he looks black on this cover. And he's an immature dragon, in that he's still very, very young. Dragons apparently reach maturity after 4 or 5 centuries. So, of course, Skeeve is a little like, well, why the heck would I want? But, you know, it was just kind of it was an accident. He accidentally fed him, and now the dragon is attached to him.
Yeah. And by accidentally feed, she means Gleep came up behind him and nibbled on his sleeve.
Yeah, started eating his clothes. So, it's like an adorable little kitty being a little...
Except, you know, it's 6
it's
feet long and 2 feet...
4 foot tall.
4 foot tall.
Yeah, big old dragon. But so anyway, so they all team up, and then they include this demon hunter from Claw, from Skeeve's dimension, and they go to fight this Istvin guy, who... It's just, there's such a build-up. You know, Oz and Tanda have already faced him once, and he's this really big bad and all this stuff. And we meet him, and he's the owner of this inn. And he's clearly insane.
Yeah.
He makes a comment that I wrote down because it kind of freaked me out a little bit. He said he hadn't had so much fun, or was so jovial as he was with what's going on in this scene, as when he made love to his sister a week dead.
Yeah.
Meaning he had sex with his dead sister's corpse after it was already a week old. So he cray-cray.
Yeah.
He totes cray-cray. But it's just such an anticlimactic, oh, we put something in your drink and now you two are powerless just like Oz is. And it's like, that's it? that's the climax. I mean, I remember when I was reading it, and I was looking at the page numbers, and like on the Nook, you know, they kind of vary a little bit, but it was page 165, and in the Nook it's only 173 pages, and I'm like, we got 8 pages to wrap this sucker up, and there's not going to be a big to-do, is there?
No.
And there's not.
No.
It's just like...
Yeah, it's more of a... It's more of an undertone type thing, because a lot of it is the over-the-table conversation. You know, everybody trying to keep things light and, oh, we're not doing anything, but then, like, a lot of things are happening subtly, like, Tanda tries to blow dart him or something, and he does magic that locks everyone in. And, of course, he's not too worried because he is so powerful.
Istvan's not too worried?
Yeah, that Istvan clearly can out-magic anyone. So I think the idea is, it's clear that he's expecting them to do something big and flashy, but then he's taken down by something so minor as...
putting a joke powder that takes your powers away for a century. In your wine, you know, that's what it does. And it's like, that is an extremely valid and great strategy, right? No blood was spilt. You know, nobody got horribly, brutally murdered or anything, even though it seemed like for a minute some people were. A lot of weird things going on in this book. So, I mean, from a military standpoint, yes, that was the best move. You quickly, quietly, and without any fuss or muss dealt with the situation. Well done, you. I am the type of person who enjoys
a good action scene.
Who enjoys a good action scene. Okay? Like, Paul and I think the first date we ever went, I used date because we weren't sure what was going on at the time. I think this was just before you went to Japan for a semester. But we went out and we watched Mission Impossible 3. Okay, so that was our first, let's go out together thing. And then you came back from Japan, and we spent a day, you know, just like playing pool and whatnot. We came back to my dorm room, and we watched Saw 3. And I like that movie. You know, I like the Saw movies. I think they're kind of cool. And so, like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm interested in. Some fast action, some stuff blows up, you know. Like, there's some blood and whatnot, and then everything. Let's just sit down, have a drink. Haha, I won. You know?
So, what I really love about this series as a whole, and a lot of the books kind of have the same thing that you're complaining about, it's the idea that, or it's kind of like the idea of how a lot of adults say that being an adult is, or all adults are basically children just trying to fake it in the world.
Yes.
It's like nobody really knows what they're doing or has control of their life the way they thought adults did when they were kids.
True.
So a lot of it comes down to Skeev is majorly outclassed. So instead of, you know, doing a week training a la any, like, Kung Fu movie or Harry Potter or anything and having huge battles, it's a lot of the fake it and come up with clever solutions. So it's very strategy, cleverness based over action based.
And all things considered, I mean, I think it's, I think it definitely works. It fits with the theme of the book kind of all throughout, because when we first meet Oz, he is, in his own right, a powerful magician. He knows how to do a lot of different magics. He's been around, you know, for quite a long time. He's been to multiple different dimensions, but now he's stuck in this one dimension, very low technology, very low amount of magic compared to places he's been, and he doesn't have any of his magic anyway. So he definitely bluffs throughout the majority of the book, because he kind of has to. you know, because he doesn't have any magic up his sleeve. He doesn't even have any sleeves. So, sorry. But, like, you know, he kind of has to rely on Skeeve, on his apprentice, who's not great with magic yet. He's still learning. He's still an apprentice. He's only been able to teach him for, like, 2 weeks, I think, is the time period that goes by. So, it makes perfect sense. And Skeeve's sitting here going, oh, shouldn't we stock up? Shouldn't we get more weapons? Shouldn't we get more allies? Shouldn't you teach me some more advanced magic? And Oz is like, no, you know, he doesn't give his plan out.
Yeah.
Which I think, considering Skeeve is just a little too naive and a little too innocent, is a good idea. Because he's likely to blurt out, you know, whatever is going on. But to his credit, when he spent enough time with Oz, and Oz would get into a bullshit situation and would just start bullshitting.
Therein lies the story.
Therein lies the story, he says 3 times in the entire of the book. But eventually Skeeve just kind of learns to go with it, which is good. Like, they're, you know, they meet up with some other assassins who are trying to... They had originally been the ones to kill Skeeve's original master, so now they're trying to track, you know, all the other bad guys, or not the bad guys, but those who would oppose Istvin and all that jazz, and they're able to very cleverly bullshit their way out of a potentially serious situation, because they don't have much. They don't have a lot of weapons, they have very little magic, just what, you know, Skeeve's been learning. So, the bullshit method works very, very well. So I will give credit where it is due in that particular part of this story. So, yeah.
And which I also like as... Because I grew up with this book. You know, I've read this since I was a child. I don't know how young. But it is... Like, if you look at a lot of action movies, the moral of the action movie is get a bigger gun to take out your enemies.
Always.
And whereas this is much more, even though it has a lot more mature content, talking about all the violence and whatnot, it's still, the moral of the lesson is you don't need violence to overcome your situations. If you're going into it hoping it's a action,
full of magic and whatnot and cool demons and all this jazz, you're not really gonna get that. Now, again, I couldn't remember exactly what had happened in the book, and actually the ending of the book I got mixed up with the ending of one of the other books that's later on, because I was trying to be like, I thought there was gonna be a big battle. Why aren't they hiding behind a bush talking about stuff? But that's not until, like, the next book or the book after or whatever.
And next book is definitely one of my favorites in the series. Whereas this one definitely is not. It's a introduction to the universe.
It's a good introduction, but in
the characters.
In my opinion, it's almost an epilogue. If that makes sense, because it's so short.
Epilogue or prologue?
Prologue.
Okay.
I know my Latin roots. It's almost a prologue. I mean, it's such a quick read, and, you know, it just kind of outlines basically how Oz and Skeeve met, what their relationship is like, and
what Oz's personality is.
Right, you know, just kind of a brief introduction to here's what they're like, here's what their friends, some of their friends, like Tanda is like. We do get... What's his face? The demon hunter, who I think does come back later. Quickly.
Much later, yeah.
He does come back later. And of course we get Gleep. And you gotta figure out kind of why does he have a dragon? Well, he didn't mean to get one. The dragon ate his sleeve and then he had to buy him. Anyway. I mean, they're definitely funny scenes. They're definitely, like the scene with when he gets Gleep. And how protective Gleep becomes of him, because he's now attached to Skeeve. So he's definitely a very loyal, you know, I'm going to protect my human, you know, kind of thing. And it's really cute. But I know there is a book later on that's from Gleep's perspective.
Well, not the whole book, just one's...
Oh, yeah, the chapters.
It's the chapters. Yeah. It was a experiment to tell from different perspectives, which I don't think worked too well. But then a later book, was it like either a later? Yeah, I think it was. Oh, I can't remember. Either a later or earlier book did go completely from another character's perspective, and that one is my favorite. But the one where they jump from character to character, and one of the characters is from Gleep's perspective, it's not good.
Yeah, one of the chapters is from Gleep's perspective. It's just, I mean, we'll get there eventually, but the point is that Gleep's personality is not what we think it is.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. In my opinion, Gleep is an adorable little,
it's kind of
babby
like,
dragon that doesn't
and we'll talk about when we get there. But it's kind of like Nibbler from Futurama.
Mm-hmm.
How he's all cute, and then you get a chance to like hear him talk, and all of a sudden he's a completely different character. So
not too many spoilers.
So, yeah, no, this book is definitely much more of a comedy than action adventure, and I love the writing of the book. I know you say it's definitely written for a younger audience or a younger reading level.
I feel like it is.
But the writing, which touches to my heart, is very, very sarcastic. Not that the characters are sarcastic, but the way it's written is. Like Oz decides to, before he realizes he's lost his magic, decides to go back to his own dimension and just leave Skeev to himself. And Skeev says, "I wanted to shout to make him stop and listen to me, but he had already started. He spread his arms at shoulder height, looked heavenward, took a deep breath, and then clapped his hands. Nothing happened." And that's the end of, I think, like, chapter 2. And just this kind of snappy sarcasm in the writing that I find very humorous. Because I'm a sarcastic person.
I mean, yes, I agree, but I feel like the writing is trying to be dry. It's almost trying to read, like, you know how British humor is very dry.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what it's trying to do, but it is written by an American in the 70s, so it's not... I mean, I liked it, and I will continue to read the series. It's just... for me, it's very lukewarm.
Yeah. And there's definitely other books in this series that are worse than this book. There's other books that are way better than this book. I mean, it's kind of hit or miss.
I'm sorry.
What? That's like, maybe not the next book, but the book after that?
Well, that's another thing. There's not a lot of puns in the book.
No.
Like the,
Primarily, all the puns are just in the titles.
Right, yeah. And the titles, like Dresden Files and, the Xanth series.
Yes.
Far more puns within the text themselves.
Oh, Xanth is built... The world of Xanth is built on puns.
It's not... I don't... Look. Paul tried to get me into Xanth and didn't really succeed.
It's hard for a modern person to get into Xanth if you're trying to read from the beginning.
Yeah, because, like, this was written in the 70s, but I think the first couple Xanth books were written in the 60s. Were they? Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. So they're just written by an old white guy that... Anyway. The Xanth is different. But anyway, so... I'm excited to read the rest of this series. I'm happy I read the first book so I can kind of remember all these things. But again, I found it a little lukewarm. But what I do like about it is that it has these... in my opinion, random quotes at the beginning of each chapter, because I don't feel a lot of the quotes actually match with what's going on in the situation. Like...
I mean, a lot... Because they're all false quotes. They're quotes meant to be funny. And I think they kind of match. It's not a direct telling you what's going to happen...
Right. I mean, they're meant to. They're just kind of meant to be silly, but I don't know. You're supposed to be. Well, I guess it does kind of make sense. The beginning of the chapter where our two main characters get hung. Isn't that fun? We have this phony quote. This quote actually did make me laugh. We have this phony quote from Napoleon Bonaparte. The secret to winning the support of large groups is positive thinking. So that made me laugh. But chapter 13 is the one that actually made me laugh out loud. Not 13, 15. Chapter 15 actually made me laugh out loud. I guess it's the next chapter. 2 chapters.
Here.
Don't touch. Okay. So this is the quote that doesn't really make any sense, because I'm not sure if they're trying to steal something, or, I mean, they're trying to steal something. Well, they're trying to get into a place. There's nothing really thievy about what's going on. But this quote did make me laugh. It's, anyone who uses the phrase, easy as taking candy from a baby, has never tried taking candy from a baby. The quote is from Robin Hood. I like that quote. Because one would hope Robin Hood's never actually tried to take candy from a baby, but...
Rich babies.
Anyway, rich babies.
I don't know, one of my favorite quotes was... Oh yeah. One of the joys of travel is visiting new towns and meeting new people. Genghis Khan. You know, so we got a lot of really silly quotes. There's one about, you know, oh, in dangerous situations, you know, you have to remember to not lose your head. Of course, Marie Antoinette, you know, stuff like that. So they're fun little quotes that kind of break it up. And you're right, the book is straight up supposed to be a comedy. Yes.
And after reading Dresden, it's kind of hard to make that transition. Because if you watched our Dresden review, the first book in the Dresden Files, I mean, they're all like this, but, you know, it's dark, it's bloody, bad things happen, and you really want the good guy to win, but gosh darn it, nobody else in the entire book wants him to win. You know, like, everyone else is making it as difficult as bloody possible to help him, you know, solve the crime and whatever. So I guess it was because we had just read a book that had a lot of swords and sorcery in it as well, even though it's an urban fantasy.
It is, yeah.
But there was a lot of action, there was a lot of blood, you know, it was...
A lot of sex.
Well, not a lot of sex. Well, okay, no, there was a fair bit of sex. But like, yeah, it was clearly you know, made for adults, whereas this one, like I said, the way it read, the reading level just seemed so much lower that I was like, maybe this is a kid's book, but then there are overtures to sex and, of course, violence and people getting hung and all this stuff, and I'm like, well, that's not really kid-friendly, if you ask me. But, I mean, I guess, yeah, I wouldn't care if I had, like, a 15-year-old kid. I wouldn't mind if they read it.
It has... Yeah, it has the violence and allusions to sex and whatnot. It's definitely, I guess, more for the young teen or the preteen or something. Somebody old enough who knows what death is. But it's not... Because, like, Dresden Files, when they talk about sex and violence, it's very...
visceral.
Graphic. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is much lighter and much more comedic.
I guess, but I mean, they talk about prostitutes and stuff. So yeah. It's like,
I mean, they're a thing that existed. Still exist.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm
PC
a woman.
world.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a woman, and a lot of it was obviously the sexual bits were made all about women.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what's bothering me.
And yeah, that's definitely from... Because Skeeve is a virgin, young adult who,
That's why the unicorn likes him so much.
Yeah.
I kid you not, the unicorn likes him better than Oz.
Yep.
Which, I mean, you know, they talk about, they're like, well, I guess that makes sense because Oz is technically a demon in this reality. So, of course, if this is the mount of a demon hunter, surely... this war unicorn, as they call it. They never describe what the war unicorn looks like, by the way, which I found a little... Is he black? Is he white? I don't know. What does it look like? I don't know. Maybe that's what it is, because, like, when Jim Butcher writes a scene, he is very careful to describe almost every little bit of it, including, like, what everything smells like. He writes in a very visceral way.
Which actually annoys me when we get to the sex bits, like,
Oh.
because Dresden goes on and on and on about, like, the shape of a woman's breast, and I'm like, get on with it. It's like, can't you just say she's a woman?
I don't know. For some reason, that doesn't bother me in Dresden. Maybe it's because the women that he's referring to are often extremely strong and will punch him in the face and probably send him sprawling, even though he's like 6'8". So maybe that's why it doesn't bother me so much.
Well, yeah, but every woman in the Myth series, if it wasn't for Skeeve
every
eventually...
woman? You mean Tanda?
In the series.
Tanda?
And Bonnie, and
Yep.
Murky.
Okay, I don't remember any of these people. I vaguely remember Bunny.
Luana, she couldn't punch out Skeeve. But she's also...
I wouldn't call her a strong female character.
No, she's wily in a completely different way, in more of that stereotypical women are tricksy ways.
Yeah, that's not a great outlook either. But anyway.
But no, all the other...
No, I mean, I do like Tanda. I don't know.
And Tanda's brother. When we get
I don't
next...
remember Tanda's brother.
Is it next book? I think... Ooh. I don't know whether it's next book or the book after. I think it's next book where we meet Tanda's brother, and her brother have a fantastic relationship.
She and her brother.
Yeah.
I'm Grammar Girl. I'm not Grammar Girl. Because I will mess it up some fierce.
But yeah, so I mean, I love this series. This book is not the strongest start to the series, but then again, the first Dresden book wasn't the start. We're having a lot of strong starts.
A lot of firsts on this show, which makes sense. We're going to review a lot of different series because we like series. Every once in a while, we'll do a one-off.
Yeah.
I'm currently reading The Martian for I think the third or fourth time. Love that book by Andy Weir. Oh my god, it's so good. Now I haven't seen the movie, but when I saw the previews for it, I thought Matt Damon, that is the perfect actor to play Mark. That is a 10 out of 10. You guys. I've heard it's good. But anyway, so we are right about at the 60-minute mark here. So yes, not a strong start, but as I said, very fast read. It's not going to take you long to read it. And it sets everything up nicely for a series that really is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's comedic. I love the world building in it, with the different dimensions and how magic is done. The bazaar on Deva is fantastic, and we're going to see that all over the place. So we'll talk about that more on the next episode.
Yeah,
but it's this.
Well, not
basically,
on the next episode having to do with...
Next myth episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's basically a whole world that is a trading...
It's a bazaar.
Road. Yeah.
Literally.
The whole world is a bazaar, and it's...
Flea market, bazaar, world market kind of thing, where anybody and everybody comes to trade, do business, and that kind of stuff. And it is run by the DeVilles because they are great writers of contracts. Again, that whole devil, persona kind of
the reason why that devil stereotype happened.
Right.
We're told.
Yeah, right. So, all that jazz. But no, I mean, it's not going to take a lot of your time, so, whatever.
And it is interesting because it's not urban fantasy because obviously it doesn't take place in this world. But it's also not really... It is a high fantasy, but it's also kind of... doesn't use many tropes from high fantasy. Like, if you think Lord of Rings, you have the elves and the dwarves. Most high fantasy has a
Tolkien
certain...
elements.
Yeah, Tolkien-esque elements, certain species and whatnot that's going on. Whereas this uses a lot of the creatures that would have been more from urban fantasy, but in a high fantasy setting. Which is also very interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think the world building is a lot of fun. We end up visiting a lot of different dimensions and having great old shenanigans and stuff.
All the shenanigans.
So, the future books I do recall being a lot more fun. So I'm eager to keep reading this series. I think it'll pick up. I mean, again, first book written in 1978. I don't know if this was Robert Asprin's first book he ever wrote. Could have been. So that could also have to do with it. Like we said, in our last review, the first Dresden book was Jim Butcher's first book he ever got published. So, you know, sometimes it takes people a little time to get up off the ground, figure out how they want to write certain characters and how they want to write certain scenarios, stuff like that. So
yeah, he also did a series Fool's Company, Phules.
yeah, I get it.
The few, the proud, the stupid, the inept. They do more damage before 9 a.m. than most people do all day, and they're mankind's last hope.
Oh, that just sounds like a peach. Oh, okay. Sorry, there was smoke coming. If you see smoke, that came from my teapot there. The tea light that I had underneath just went out. It just ran out. So, that's what it was. Everything's cool. But yeah, so I recommend it. I think it's a fun read if that's what you want to do. I'm not being very good at promoting it.
You're being horrible. I love this series, and you should check it out. It does have hits, it does have misses, but you will probably find at least one or two of the books in this series that are just fantastic for your taste.
They are funny. They're definitely a comedic series. If you're looking for something a little lighter after maybe you read a little Dresden, then this is a good light read that's really a lot of fun. So that is Robert Asprin's Another Fine Myth, or what we thought of it in any case. Next week, I think we're doing another start to a series. I believe we are doing Mercy Thompson, the Mercy Thompson series. So Patricia Briggs, Mercy Thompson series, book 1. Moon Called.
Yes, Moon Called.
I was like, what the hell is it called?
Nobody knows.
Yeah, so Moon Called by Patricia Briggs, first of the Mercy Thompson series. That's what we're doing next week. So, yeah, I did 2 rows. How did you?
2 rows.
2 rows. And, so let us know how you're doing on your projects, and we will see you next week.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.